So in this episode of Estate and CX, I'm with the awesome Abigail Grey from Grey & Co, a truly independently run family business. In this episode, we cover how she started in the business from like the age of 11, doing the fundamental tea making, to then working for her father's business, to then taking it over, and the transformation that's taken place, and how even motherhood has actually changed her as a leader. So this episode is an awesome one for anyone who wants to listen to it, who's interested in how you run a family business and as well as being an awesome mother. Hope you enjoy. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Firstly, you didn't know this was going to happen. I thought I'd surprise you.
Well, you do have the
on
box
this show.
there, so you know.
I thought I'd present it. You're actually the first presenter of our Innovation Awards. So I'll take that away from you as well. So I thought I'd just pass it on to you today. For anyone listening out there, Abby's just won our leading innovation award.
Good thing I've got a big handbag.
Is it? I know. Actually, this is what I forgot about because Mark brought it over and he said it's actually quite heavy. I thought I didn't actually mention to Abigail about that. Is that the third or second year?
Third.
Third three-time winner. Yeah. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
Always well deserved. So for anyone listening out there, Abigail Grey of Grey & Co.
Yes.
And for anyone who doesn't know who you are, but everyone really should do, because you seem to be in quite a few different network of groups of people out there. Give us a bit of background. So where did Abigail start in a estate agency? What was your first day in a estate agency? What did it look like?
The first day I was ever employed as an estate agent?
Yeah.
Or the first day I was involved with the estate agency?
First influence of in a estate agency.
Okay, so I think probably my earliest memory of a estate agency is going into my dad's office, which was on the Harrow Road in Sudbury Town. And I think I just fell in love with offices because it was obviously, I think I must have been, I don't know, 6, 7. It was my first introduction into going into an office, and I just love these desks and all these drawers. And actually one of the ladies that's still part of our team now, she says she remembers me going in, just opening everyone's drawers and looking inside and like just being obsessed with what everyone was keeping in their drawers. I guess I was just a bit nosy.
The big brown desks?
Big brown desks, yeah, yeah. Big deep drawers full of pens and all sorts of different things. Then my next strongest memory is when I was 11 and the family just decided to open up their own estate agency because my dad had sold out for his agency to the Pru and then had decided after a number of years in corporate estate agency that he wanted to go out on his own again. So he set up about 5 minutes down the road from where he had his first company. And he had all the leaflets printed. And I know we don't talk about leaflets anymore, but you know, it was the 80s, so I think it was okay. He had all his leaflets printed and I had to walk up and down the streets of Wembley delivering these letters telling everyone that Grey & Co was opening in a couple of weeks on Wembley High Road. So that was my first involvement in doing anything estate agency. Then from then growing up during the summer holidays, I'd have to go in and make tea and filing and stuff like that. But my first day being an employed estate agent or trainee negotiator, as they called me then, I was sat down and said, Abigail, this is your desk. And here's a box of cards. It's like, okay. And here's a pen. And what you're going to do is you're going to answer the phone. There's your desk phone. And you are going to put all the details of the people down on these pieces of card. And you're going to keep them in your box. And we call that box a hot box. And everyone had one on their desk. So I would answer the phone, I'd take people's details, and then I would start trying to match them with properties that we had in a A4 ring binder. And I think we just started using a digital camera, which was amazing. And apparently I never had to make any more trips to the photography studio up the road to go and collect anything. What was it, Kodak or Snappy Snaps or something? Because just before I'd started, they were still doing that. So digital camera, answering phones, dealing with people that walked into the office. And I think the last time I was ever bored was on the 1st of January 2002, because on the 2nd of January I started work at Grey & Co, and I don't think I've been bored ever since.
2002.
I know, I'm an old git.
And what did that, that was, so 2002, 20 odd years ago, yeah? Mm-hmm. And then, so you had probably a 10-year period between that from when you first was in it. like 11 years old, effectively child labour.
Child labour, yeah, free child labour, yeah. I think I might have got some pocket
helping
money.
out the family.
Exactly,
And also, instead of
do my
most
bit.
kids were mowing lawns and
I
washing
did do
cars.
that. My dad didn't let me wash the car anymore because I
You were
scratched
like,
it with my watch the first time I did
leaflet
it.
dropping and
Leaflet
making
dropping,
teas.
yeah. He was like, she's better for leaflet dropping, no car washing for her.
Yeah. Okay, so 2002. What did you learn in those early few years?
It's really hard to remember what it was like other than just answering phones and dealing with people. I watched my dad a lot to see how he dealt with situations, and I picked up a lot, I think, just through osmosis and being in the office. I also learnt what not to do from some of the other team members at the time. It's so difficult. It's such a long time ago. I think I just learnt that you had to get stuff done. Just get on with things. Whatever comes your way, you've got to deal with. And if someone calls and you can't answer, make sure you call them back. That was one of the first things. Like, do not be the person that doesn't call someone back, because so often you'd get someone phoning up saying, oh, I left a message for so-and-so and they haven't rung me back yet. So try and avoid that if you can. What
was your relationship like with your dad, and how he, as an employee, how he led you? Was he tough on you? Was he soft on you? Because I've got a lot of people, clients I speak to, and they're in that transition of a family member taking over a business, and some of them are, you've got some who are literally like, they're polar opposites, especially when you've got a newer generation coming in now who's seen a massive change in social media, and like they're going, Dad, we should be doing this, this, and this, and the dad's like, yeah, but like how was that in the early stages?
We didn't really clash very much, my dad and I. I think we both were quite relaxed people in that we respected each other's opinions, even if we didn't agree with each other. And obviously he was the head, so he called dibs on what was going to happen. So if I came with an idea and he didn't see the merit in it, it wasn't being done. But if I could advocate a good case, he would sort of open his pockets and let us pay out for something.
And how did the team respond to you coming in?
I think they could see that I wasn't there based purely on nepotism. Like, I was a hard worker. I was always taught, from both my parents from a young age about grafting. Nothing was given to you. Everything had to be earned. And I carried that through with me to work. And wherever I've worked, I think anybody would tell you she was a grafter. They probably also tell you she wasn't a great employee because she was a bit headstrong.
Maverick.
Yeah. I don't know about Maverick in the early days, but definitely I got told by some of my bosses that I wasn't that great at taking orders unless I could see the merit in what they were asking me to do. My dad was a great teacher, but he didn't teach you, didn't sort of sit down and say, do this. You had to watch him to learn. And I've always been somebody who pays attention, very observant to what's going on around me. So that's why I was able to pick up a lot of things. My dad was very methodical. So even if he wasn't there and I needed to learn how to do something, as long as I could remember where he'd done it before, if it was something paper-based, I'd be able to go and pull the file and find out how he'd worked something out if I needed to do that, or how he'd drafted a letter. Like, okay, right, I know Dad did a good letter on that. Let me go and find a copy and I'll have a go at doing it myself. And I think the team saw that I wasn't going to be given any sort of princess treatment. I mean, I've never been given princess treatment in my life. So my dad was probably harder on me than anybody else. And in fact, through the years, we've had some team members who he has definitely let get away with far more than me. I remember saying to him once about an old employee of ours, I was like, you're much nicer to him, and he gets away with far more things than you would ever let me do. And he said, well, Abigail, I don't know what he's doing when he goes home, but if you've been out at night and then you call me the next morning and say you don't feel well, I know it's because you've had too much to drink the night before. So obviously I could never pull a sickie with a hangover because he knew. He's like, if you've been out till 2 a.m., that's your problem, not mine. So I still had to make sure if I'd been out till 2 a.m., I was still pulling myself into the office the next day at 9 a.m. What else can I say? Yeah, we didn't really clash. Like I said, one or two things where we had disagreements about potentially how a situation should be dealt with. And sometimes in the later years, as I'd gone more senior in the company, he might sort of acquiesce to my way of thinking, because he would see that I perhaps had more experience in that particular matter. I remember a couple of years in, we'd had a string of very poor lettings managers, and I was complaining to him. I was like, Dad, you keep hiring really useless people for this job role. And he turned around to me and he said, if you think you could do a better job, you can be the lettings manager. And I was like, oh, that wasn't what I was after, and that wasn't what I was expecting. And he was like, do it. You be the lettings manager then. I was like, oh, okay then. I'll have a go. So that sort of steered me from doing both bits, sales and lettings, to going more on the lettings side of the business. And I think that probably is why our business now is a much larger lettings and management business than it is sales.
How long from, say, training negotiator, hot box?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years till I became the lettings manager.
Do you know, it reminds me actually of, we've known each other for quite a few years. It reminds me of exactly the same story that I had, but not where.
Not with you guys.
Family, yeah. And I was always that person, like, we need to change stuff. And then they said, if you know what you're doing, you take over lettings. And I was like, went to lettings with no experience, thought, I'll just see how it goes. So that was 3 years. So how did you find the transition from that then?
So I think I was at a bit of a crossroads at work at that time anyway, because I was really struggling with doing sales valuations. I think I was a female in my early 20s in the area that I worked. It's very hard to go and convince someone that you should be listing their property for sale. And I also struggled then with trying to work out values, whereas on rentals it was much easier, and it was definitely more female friendly in lettings at that particular time in the industry. So I think that just made moving solely to lettings much easier for me. I still had an eye on whatever was going on in the office. I don't know whether I'm a nosy Parker or I've got big ears, or my dad always used to call me the elephant. So like, if you don't want Abigail to know something, you need to say it outside the building, because she'll hear one way or another. But you have to be aware of what's going on. And I wanted to be in a position that if someone called up and no one could answer their question, I'd at least have an understanding of who they were and who it was that was supposed to be helping them. So I could say, so-and-so's not here right now. I know you're calling about X and you need to know why. So as soon as they get back, I'll make sure we get the answer and we get them to call you back. So that's a much nicer customer experience to go, oh, he's not here right now and no one can help you. You don't want to ring a company and nobody has any awareness of anything.
And I think actually you find that a lot within the industry. If you've got lettings and sales teams, it can be sometimes like a big border between the two. Like, I only do sales, I only do lettings, and then like you get that. And that's a difference. I do think that I loved what you said, experience, because if you take it on the basis of customer service, the customer service is, thank you very much, I'll take that phone call and I'll pass on and someone will call you back. Whereas if you go from an experience perspective, you're wanting to deliver something a bit more. So that person, the experience is that person has actually felt known, that they're not just a random person calling up, I haven't got a clue what you're doing or talking about, and someone, whoever wants to be interested in you, will call you back. So 3 years into it, so you're talking about 2005, so you started head into the interesting few years, heading into the sort of recession period of time.
Yeah, I mean, rentals was good, but yeah, it did hit a bit of a...
And what was the size of the portfolio when you first took over as a lettings manager?
About 150, I think.
Yeah.
About 150, yeah.
And what was for someone maybe just listen to this who's in sales but never worked in lettings, what did you find was was there any differences between the two that you felt?
I think what I liked about lettings is you're building long-term relationships. You're not just speaking with someone for a period of, let's say, probably about 6 months on sales, right? Yeah. You build a relationship for 6 months and then all of a sudden it's over. Lettings, it could be for life, couldn't it? Yeah. Sometimes, and with some of our clients it is. And there are instances where you're thinking, I wish this was only a sales transaction that was 6 months long.
I was literally about to say,
But in the main, we build some fantastic relationships on both sides with both stakeholders, both landlords and tenants. And I just really enjoy seeing how those relationships grow and, getting to know more about those people and their families. It's really nice to be able to ring somebody up who you might, in my case now, obviously I don't speak to the tenants very often, but there are some that I'll ring them up now, like, how's your boys? How are they getting on? How's your husband? Are you still working here? Have you retired yet? People that we've perhaps been renting properties to for 20 years or
Yeah, I was about to
renting
say,
properties for 20 years. I've got clients that have been clients of ours since the business opened in 91
Wow.
on the sales and letting side.
Yeah, I remember I used to have a tenant who used to come in every month to pay his rent, a guy called Brad, and he was our longest standing tenant.
Yeah, we got a couple of those.
And it's just, they're like the heritage of the business, isn't it? Where you come back and they've actually probably seen more staff go through there than anyone else.
That is very true.
And then so it's quite
and also that's another marketing avenue for you, isn't it? Yeah. Long-term tenants and long-term landlords are going to be singing your praises to other people, whether they're tenants or landlords or people selling their houses. You know, some of our tenants will have friends that have houses for sale, and they'll say, "Oh, I think you should give these guys a call because they're brilliant to us. So why wouldn't they be brilliant for you?"
So in lettings, and that was 2005. When did the transition go from Dad being sort of stepping back and you coming to more forefront of the business in general?
As I became more senior, so I sort of went from lettings manager. 2008, I became a director of the business when my dad and his partner went their separate ways, and I took on a little bit more responsibility in terms of managing the team. I started calling myself lettings director, and I knew a little bit more about what was going on in the administrative side of the business, but not a lot. And I think my dad was sort of occasionally asked me questions about, like, what do you want for the future, Abigail? You know, do we talk about what's going to happen later? And I was like, no, let's not talk about that, Dad. And I think at that point in time, I was quite happy coming in, doing my job and going home. And when I say going home, I probably wasn't going home till like 10 o'clock at night or doing work in the evening. So I was really putting in the hours, but I didn't really want to think about running the business. And we'd also talked about him potentially selling. So we'd had Hart approach us at the time, or whatever the head company's called, I can't remember now. And Spicer Hart, wasn't it? They'd approached us about buying us out. And I kind of thought, well, if that happens, they'll want me to stay. The deal was they'd want me to stay on for a couple of years to help the transition. And maybe I could accelerate myself through their company's hierarchy while my dad retired, and we both got a bit of a nice chunk of change out of it. But then they came back with a silly offer, so he didn't accept it, and we just kept on doing the doing for a while without much of a plan. And I think that was my fault because I didn't press him on it, and I think I just thought someone else will come along and he'll sell out, so there's no point doing anything. And I was just so busy doing the job, because whilst I was lettings director, I had 2 negotiators working with me, plus I was doing the majority of the property management as well. So now I look back on it, I think, oh my God, how did I do that? But somehow I did. And then in 2014, so quite a few years later, we just rolled during that period and just grew things and just kept going, really. But we didn't focus on the business. We just kept focusing on keeping the business going. 2014, my dad got diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor, and then we had to talk about it. We had to talk about what was going to happen. And I think that was difficult. That was difficult because I still didn't really know what I wanted. I mean, I'd got into estate agency as a stopgap, sort of after I'd left uni, and I didn't really know what else to do with myself. So I had never thought that this is where I was going to be in my early 30s. I was like, I was supposed to do my degree and become a psychologist, but that wasn't the road that I took. So I kind of arrived here accidentally and never really thought about what I was doing because I was so involved in doing the doing. But obviously now we had to talk about what was going to happen. And I still was kind of shying away from it. 1, because you don't really want to face your parents' mortality. And 2, because I still wasn't really sure this was what I wanted. But the other part of me is saying, well, you're here now. You've made your bed. Now you need to make the best of it.
In those few years leading up to that period of time, and you kept on saying there was those conversations, and I was like in that hamster wheel, and it was there. Like, what was your greatest fear of not taking that step?
I don't think I ever felt fear. I just kind of thought, this isn't what I want.
Yeah. Was it more acceptance of your path you'd gone down, of like, reality is this is what I was doing, but actually my dream was still here, but maybe 10 years before?
Yeah, I mean, being an estate agent was definitely not my dream.
Yeah, I think with most people.
But I also think there are aspects of that job that fit into, well, it's not even a job, is it? I was quite call it that vocational calling from whatever higher power it is that you believe in.
Especially when it comes to psychology.
Well, exactly. Look, there definitely is a large element of psychology in being an estate agent, particularly when you are working in lettings and management.
Yeah.
You know, you have to just accept that people are strange beings, and it's not about you, it's about them. And don't, that's where you develop your thick skin, right? Don't get upset because it's not about the boiler, it's about something else.
Yeah.
But you can help with that, and you can't help with the other stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably what kept me in it.
Yeah.
Actually, the psychological element of dealing with people. And one of the other things is when you're doing a good job, people tell you some of the time that you're doing a good job. And that's nice to hear, isn't it? And it's nice for people to call up and say, oh, I only want to deal with Abigail. And my dad would say to me, and when I'd roll my eyes for the 17th time that day when someone said that, I'd be like, well, Abigail, you're a victim of your own success. You just treat them too well, and they want to keep coming back to you. And I was like, okay. But as for fear, honestly, I don't know. And I think that's still a big question for me. Like, how did I get here? Why did I get here? And what am I doing? I still don't have the answer to those questions.
So if you don't mind me going back to it, the transition with your dad then, what was like with having that terminal illness and then working with him and that all happening and being in your early 30s? If you don't mind me asking.
I'd had a few other things that I put on top of myself at that time as well. So
and trying to run it all.
It
could be a big storm.
It was a big storm. And then, as is typical of myself and my now husband, we thought we'd add a few more things into the mix. We thought we'd get married as well before my dad popped his clogs. And then we found out we were having a baby just after we got married. So my dad was given a sort of 12 months to live.
Yeah.
He thankfully lasted 2 years. So he got to see us get married and he got to see us have a baby. But I mean, that was a hell of a lot. And sometimes I look back and I was like, oh my God, how did I do all that? Yeah. But then I also think there are other people who've had far more difficult challenges in life than me. So
huge resilience.
It is huge resilience. But like I say, there are other people that are far more resilient than me. Yeah. When we first got the diagnosis, I thought, like, I just felt like I'd been hit by a bomb, It took me a few weeks to get over that. And I think for me, I did my grieving then.
Yeah.
Very much so. Like, those first few weeks were very traumatic for me, as if someone had just suddenly died in my family. So I think that doing that, although it was horrendous, like I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I did struggle going to work, but I managed it. But half the time I'd be like crying in the back office or something. And whenever anyone came in and asked about my dad, I'd like break down in tears. But I think the other thing is people see that in you and they realize that you're a real person.
Yeah.
And they appreciate the family-centeredness of the estate agency, because everybody in our agency at the time was bereft by the news. But my dad, he went and had his chemo, and when he was on the days he was well enough, he came into work. Like, he loved coming to work. And when he had his diagnosis, now I'm smiling, which everyone's going to think is a bit odd, but the thing that he was most upset about, other than dying, obviously, was that he couldn't drive his car anymore, and he had to get the train to work. But for 2 years, he got the train to work every day. At least he got good use out of his freedom pass. So that was quite funny. But yeah, I mean, he was amazing, my dad. He was really only very sick in the last sort of 2 months to 6 weeks of his life, which was a blessing for us. So from April 2014, when he got diagnosed, round to December 2015, he worked as much as he could, which was a fairly reasonable amount, actually. And people would come in and knew his diagnosis. And I'm like, oh my God, your dad looks quite well. And I was like, he's just lost a bit of hair from the radiotherapy, but he didn't have much in the first place anyway. But he was so I say lucky, but maybe that was just him. Maybe that was him pulling on his, internal reserves and just keeping going for everybody else, because that was the kind of guy that he was, and making sure that he left everything neat and tidy for us to deal with after he'd passed. What I probably didn't do at that time was make enough plans. I think because of what was going on, and also just how used to not making plans we'd got, we just didn't make any. We did, the bare minimum. And I knew I was going to have to go on maternity leave for a while at least after my daughter was born. So I made the bare minimum plans that I could to keep the office going as best it could while I was on mat leave. And I just got on with it. I don't know if I've answered your question.
So no, I'm grateful for you going into that much, because it's a deep conversation to have about it, especially with the involvement of not only being your dad, but you've worked in that place, and it's a baby come on the way, marriage. There's a lot happening in that period of time. So coming back off mat leave and just coming back into that working environment, with then obviously the changes that's happened with your dad, how was that going back into? That's not like an average return to work. You know what I mean? I'm going to return to work a couple of days a week. It's like, oh no, I'm going to come out of the mat leave into trying to work out how I'm going to get this business going.
Yeah. It was hard, but again, like I said, you just deal with your own reality, don't you? And this is my reality. This is what I have to deal with, and I just have to get on with it. I think if you asked me would I do it the same again, I probably wouldn't, because I think that nobody got the best of me during probably those first couple of years of my daughter's life, because I was initially working, like I came back after 3 months, but only 1 day a week, then 2 days, then 3 days. And it soon became apparent that wasn't going to be enough. So I came back full time pretty quickly. I can't remember the details now, but it meant that she had to go to my mum's, and I'd quite often be like sat with my office door locked, pumping out breast milk, because I wanted to make sure she was breastfed. And I managed 18 months, so that was pretty impressive. Yeah, not fully, but after a year, she still wasn't giving up. But that was hard. That was hard going, doing all that. But like I said, I just managed. But I also felt like I need to find a different way. Something or everything needs to change now, because not so much to put my own stamp on things, but just I started to realise that we'd been doing things just because that's how we'd always done them for so long, and because we were too busy to look for anything better. And I was like, right, now I'm calling the shots. I don't have to ask anybody else about how to do things. I need to go out and start opening myself up to whatever's out there in terms of, marketing channels, different educators. I need to learn some more stuff. Now I'm going to be managing people more than I've ever done before. I need to learn about that. I know we haven't been doing enough marketing, so I need to learn about that. So
was there a moment where I always say to clients, it's that drawing the line. You're tired of, not necessarily in your case, but sometimes you're tired of the shit that you keep telling yourself each day. You go, right, this is a line today, and then we go forward with this. And especially with the clients on a coaching perspective, I have clients where they come to that line and they either draw it and step over it, or draw it and go, we're going back. And it seems like obviously you've drew that line. Was there a moment where you said where you like locked the door off and you thought, that's it, I'm going to start down that process? Or was it something that you read or saw and you thought, oh?
I wish I could tell you it was, but like most of the things,
Christopher Watkins is here, like, please, please, mention me again.
He definitely played a part in the journey, Chris. I don't think there was a definite line in the sand, and I also think it was something I already knew.
Yeah.
And I've known for a long time. I mean,
when you said about beginning of you said in your early years, it seemed like there was that tank ingrained inside you that you're an explorer of things. So, and the next question then, it'd be good for you, because a lot of people draw the line, but then don't know what to do. So, when you started to go and find the new identity of really who you wanted to become, like, what did you do first? Like, where like did you, was it events you attended, even if they're not existent? Was it people you particularly found, groups you found,
So there
books
was
you found?
a few different things. There was books. So I think probably the first person that told me to, do you know what it was? I've just remembered now. It started with my accountant. So we'd had this.
Of all people,
I
accountant.
I won't badmouth anybody, but a friend of mine was an accountant, and we'd use another accountant, and I just thought, and this happened actually while my dad was still alive. I was like, Dad, I think we need, a bit of a change of tack here. And I'd been speaking to my friend Carl, and I said, what about if Carl takes over doing the accountancy stuff? He's got lots of good ideas. And my dad, Carl, came to the office, had a chat with me and had a chat with my dad. And my dad's like, like he suggested a few things that I hadn't, my current accountant hadn't suggested to me for, tax efficiency and stuff. And so we switched, we moved to Carl. And then Carl reintroduced me to a university friend of his who I knew, because obviously Carl and I were friends from school. And I knew his friend Alan. And Alan was just starting out on his journey as a business coach. So I engaged with Alan, and he sort of introduced me to like the E-Myth book, and then a few other bits and pieces. And we did not a lot of coaching, because Alan then went off to Portugal, I think, or somewhere else. But we did a little bit of coaching with him, and I think that sort of opened my mind to the idea of having a business coach. So that would have been 2015, 2016, because I think Alan and I finished up just as I was giving birth. And then it probably wasn't till about, I think it was probably 2017, when I remember getting an email from the Guild about an event with Sally Lawson, a day event. So I went to a day event of hers, and I think my mind just went, like, we've been doing this all wrong.
And how did that feel going to that first industry event? Like, if you think about it, like sometimes.
I mean, I've been to other industry events, like, conferences and stuff like that before, and training. But this was different, you know. It was my first experience of someone selling from the stage, the sort of slightly more Americanized version of coaching and stuff. So it was a bit of a show. She was very full on, and you just thought, like, she knows what she's talking about, and whether you like her delivery or not, she has got a point. Like, we have got this wrong. Like, we are doing so much work, and we're not getting paid for it. So we need to sort this out. And also, I think one of the other big things that answered a question that I'd had for a long time, which was, how do you get people to do what you want them to do? Like a process, right? I'd never heard the word process and statement of procedures before. And I was like, processes, that's what's been missing from Grey & Co for all this time. So that was the answer. How do you get people to do what you want them to do? You write it down and you ask them to follow it.
And do you know what's really interesting? When you throw it back to what you said about, if I needed to get a letter, I knew how my dad thought, and I'd go and find that letter. And it would probably only work for you because you know your dad's brain, whereas other staff would be sat there thinking, where do I get this? And
because I knew what was going on, I knew where to look, and because I wasn't like, what's that, Dad? What's that? Why are you doing that? Like, I could see him working out square footage and stuff like that. But exactly that. Because I knew how my dad worked, it was much easier.
Yeah.
But you had to then go and make it basically Grey & Co for people that don't know what they're doing, right? I was going to say some not nice words then, so I just restrained myself. But you need to make it so that everybody can understand it, because obviously we all learn in different ways, and we all take information in different ways. So, I mean, I wasn't doing video then, but, having it written down in a step-by-step manner, I was like, a light bulb had gone on. Why didn't we think about this before? And Dominic, who's still part of our team now, a very integral part of our team, was with me on that day, and we were both looking at each other going, why didn't we think of this before? Because Dominic's one of the few people that would do things the way that I did them. So and this is something I say.
Was he? How long had Dominic been with you before then? Was he employed by you, or was he a part of the team before?
So I think, I can't remember whether I sat in on his interview. He was definitely there when I was heading up the lettings team. So I think I probably did sit in on the interview. So I think he's going to kill me if I get this wrong. But I think he's been with us since it's either 2006 or 2008.
Yeah, so he's seen that full transition, hasn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. And he's been a key part of
Yeah.
that as well.
I mean, I even when I chat to him, I love talking to him. So
yeah, and because also he'd worked with my dad for so long, I often say to him, like, if you don't know what to do, just think, what would Phil do? And if you don't know the answer to that, think, what would Abs do?
Yeah.
Because that's what I often do. I'm like, what would my dad do in this situation? Because he's not here for me to ask anymore. And I think about, well, what would he do? He'd probably do this. All right, we should probably do that because that's probably the right thing to do.
Relatable.
Yeah.
So 2017, you said you started to open up that Pandora's box or door.
Yeah, it was totally that.
Yeah. And then next steps for that?
I think then I would just started looking at Sally Lawson stuff on Facebook, and then I found her group, and then I found loads of other groups. And I think definitely Facebook was what exploded it for me. Then you start seeing all these different people's names being repeated in posts and reading, like, oh, that guy. And I'm like, I'll shout out Tom McGee now. Kept seeing his name mentioned, like him commenting on things like, oh, I like how he thinks. Yeah. And then
I do you know what I like, because I only chatted to Tom the other day. What I love about it, he's got some very serious stuff that he will talk about, really thought-provoking stuff.
Yes.
And then he comes in with the best
one-liners
of all time. And like if I ever see his name, I'm more interested, no offense, Tom, in your one-liners because you look at the post and you think, how did your brain get to that one-liner?
Yeah. I think Tom's one of the rare few that probably has similar political beliefs to. So him and I often agree politically, whereas a lot of estate agents might be in a slightly different position to where we sit on the political spectrum. But yeah, I just saw lots of names repeated in these various different groups, and then you start commenting, and then you sort of in a way get to know them. Obviously, you're not meeting them face to face or talking on the phone, but you're talking on Facebook groups and stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess I found my tribe that way. And then you open yourself up to like watching Christopher Watkins and then playing Christopher Watkins to everyone in the office. Like, listen to what this guy's saying. This is what we should be doing. And then I think I subscribed to him as a client, and it just grew and grew from there. And that's where I first saw your name and then heard about Iceberg. I mean, which is funny because Iceberg had obviously been going for a long time before that. But I didn't even know what the bait system was. But thankfully I came in sort of just as life cycle was kicking off.
What would you say was the fundamental things that you have done since that transitional change? I know obviously it's going to be lots. Like you think about, because you've got that mindset. So, when we first met, you were still in that. That was three coming up almost 4 years ago. Yeah. You were still in that frantic state of like, I'm going to try and do this. I'm trying to do that. I'm doing this.
Still
and
doing that.
I know, like, but.
Leopard doesn't change.
Yeah, no, but what? Yeah, but you're like.
I got a bit better though.
Yeah, you seem like more calm crazy than crazy.
Yeah,
crazy,
I think
if that makes sense. Yeah.
I'm always going to be crazy. Just accept it.
I know I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But I've accepted that. So like what I've loved about seeing even the last few years your transition is you've gone from frantic, and I know that's in your nature. But you seem to be more settled in. You said about I'm trying to find the new identity of me. I have felt in the last year or so that what's been lush to see, and we don't necessarily talk as much as we did in the early stages because you've got on your own boat and you're sailing nicely. But I've just noticed in the last sort of few years, and especially in the last year, I've seen that you've almost found your identity and your new skin and who you are, and the guys I speak to in your team almost sing that as well.
I think I know what it is. And if any of my friends, when they would listen to podcasts about estate agency, listen to this, they'd be like, oh my God, you've changed. I think it's probably motherhood and coming to terms with motherhood, because I wasn't a naturally maternal person. And I think that after I had my daughter, I didn't think this at the time, but I probably was in a bit of crisis, like, actually, like, who the fuck am I? And I think I've learned to be at peace with the different parts of my life. I still live in a place where not everybody gets the best of me, but actually I would try and give my daughter the most. Like, if anybody has to get the best, if any of the aspects of my life have to be the best, it has to be with her. And then everything else has to fall into second place.
Good.
Because, like, she's my biggest project, right? And it's my responsibility, and my husband's to some extent. You know, he's got a bit of a part to play.
But what's really interesting, we're only talking on like a separate podcast I'm a part of. And we were talking about, we're reviewing James Humphrey Stones from The Avenue.
Yeah.
I didn't come across him, and he talked about and he said about the first thing as him becoming a dad is family first.
Absolutely.
And he said before that, I didn't recognise that. And some people chase financial gains to try and better the family, but they forget that in that pursuit of that, sometimes they lose the family. Whereas if you put the family first and then the pursuit afterwards, ultimately the spearhead is your daughter's interest.
Yeah.
So it's been because it's what's crazy is that I've been on calls and Zoom calls with your daughter, and she is a lively character as well. So the fact
she's frantic too. She's crazy.
Is it the craziness? Is that the fact that she's exhausted you enough that you feel
yeah,
a bit
probably.
more calm?
Yeah. Like, I'm done. Do you know what you're saying about, like, family first? I think she's definitely brought some calmness to my life, unbelievably. Like, with her frenetic energy, I think that's meant that I've had to slow down to speed up effectively. But it's also made me realise with my team how important family is. And I will quite often be using the phrase, if someone says, oh, can I have some time off to do this? And I will say 100% #family first, like, always. So if anyone says, oh, can I please have time off to go for an opening? I'm like, you don't even have to ask.
Yeah.
That is a given here for anything, you know. Or can I have time off to take my mum to hospital? Absolutely. It's not coming out of your annual holiday. Just go, take that time.
But that is a phenomenal thing to have as a leader, because there is so many businesses, not even just in the States, but so many businesses out there. It's like, you want to go do something for your family, like, you 2 hours, we're going to take it off you.
Oh, I've never been like that.
And I think if you, it ingrains it deeper that you see them as the humans working your business, not just your ants running your.
Oh gosh, no!
You know
like, that's why I don't use the word staff.
Yeah.
If I do, you have permission to slap me. Like, not even employees, like, team. We are a team.
Yeah.
Like, we can't function without each other. And they all put in so much that, you know, I would like to give back as much as I can. And I think actually that was one of my main things for keeping the business going, because it's actually not about me. It's about them. Like, I want to keep them in employment. I want, you know, to funnel money back into the business to make sure they earn more money. I want them to hit their targets, not for me, so they can walk away with more money for their families and to do the things that they want. Because I have most of what I need. So it's more important that they get out what they need.
That's phenomenal. That's a nice outlook to have on leadership, because that in some ways, by doing that, will actually get you to, you know, the guys want to earn more money because you're funneling money back into it. You're not taking it out of the business. You're not stretching it. That entails them to earn more money, and naturally, as they earn more money, the business is earning more money.
It's a circle, isn't it? And a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So, as this is a podcast around the future of estate agency, where do you see the future of estate agency going through, from your opinion?
That is a big question.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to ask me that. I hope that it's moving towards small businesses like ours rather than corporates, because you are going to get a much better, in the main, customer experience, customer journey, customer evolution with a small business that's good at building relationships. Because ultimately, being, you know, the future of estate agency is going to be about people. I think there's also technology to be added into that, and the point is you need to bring the two together, and you need to be able to maximize the use of technology to enhance your customer experience, which makes things easier for your team to be able to build those good relationships. And if you're a business that can do that, I guess even if you're a corporate, if you have good people working in your team and good tech, then there's no reason why you can't make everything better for everybody else.
I always see, like, the technology removes the admin or the stuff that people
Some of the admin,
or just get people to get tired of doing that, then makes it not fulfilling in their job to do.
Yeah.
And I think if you can combine those two together, like you said, I want the guys to earn more money. I want to be invested back in the business. I want them to do well. I want their families to, them to be able to support their families. Like if you combine that with the technology, but also, like you said, humans, isn't it? And I've always been a fundamental believer in the independent agent over a larger corporate.
I think there's something else to be said, that you need to know what your customer wants. So some of your customers only want to be on email. They don't want to be on the phone. Some of your customers only want to be on WhatsApp. And some of your customers only want to be on the phone. They don't want you to be emailing them. I mean, probably good practice. You should still email them afterwards as a follow-up. But it's really important to know your customer's communication style.
That's been an amazing episode for me. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much. I bet you say that to all your guests.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests, and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed, and then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.